The temperature has dropped to nearly zero, and with wind gusts at 20 to 30 miles an hour, it feels much colder than that. These are conditions that either validate your mettle as a local or cause you to turn and run. Welcome to December in North Dakota. We're on our way to Bismarck to meet up with Cayla Bendel. Kayla has fully embraced her life outside on the prairie. She works for North Dakota Game and Fish and also helps lead the local all-female chapter of Pheasants Forever. Women are one of the fastest growing demographics of new hunters, so let's find out why. We'll start by talking with Dr. Barbara Handy Marcello. She's a retired professor of history from the University of North Dakota who wrote the book Women of the Northern Plains. And she also happens to be an avid hunter. Barb, thanks for meeting me here at the State Museum in North Dakota. Tell me a little bit about your background.
I moved here in 1980 from Wisconsin. I grew up in Illinois, and I was immediately attracted to the bright blue skies, clean air, open country. Married to a meat scientist who was a hunter, and as part of our marriage agreement, I learned to hunt. And first thing I did was learn how to cook wild game because it was coming into our house on a regular basis. I loved it immediately. Nothing makes me happier than venison chops cooked on the grill. And I slowly began to become aware that I wanted to be responsible for the food on my table. I wanted to have a part in that.
What about upland bird hunting? What is it that's special about that for you?
Well, in North Dakota, fall is probably our best season. Nice weather, beautiful skies. The humidity's gone, the bugs are dead. Walking through the tall grass, looking for birds. Even if we don't find birds, just walking through the tall grass with a dog. The dogs had as much fun as we did, and so there's just a level of excitement and pleasure that come together in a way that nothing else does. Nothing else does. Yeah.
I think we could talk for hours and hours, but I want to ask you a few questions about, this area we're in, North Dakota. What is it about this region of the country that really connected people to the land?
Well, most people came here for the land. After the Civil War, the Homestead Act drew people to the west where land was available. People talked about free land. It wasn't exactly free. Historians have estimated it took about $1,000 to get started on that 160-acre section. But it was the land they came here for. Yeah. And it was the land that they expected would provide for their families.
Yeah. How about when it comes to hunting and in this region, and maybe even looking back further prior to the pioneers, were women part of the hunting process?
Yes. Of course, among American Indians, the hunt for bison, which was the major economic base of almost every society, women would be a part of that hunt because as soon as the game was on the ground, they would run in. They would start removing the hides, start taking the meat off, stripping it into small strips that could be dried and preserved to be used year-round. And so there was a division of labor, but also very particular skills involved. And then these families would have a meal that might involve generations, it might involve guests. Guests were always welcome in Native American homes and brought in. There was always food available for everybody. And that's part of the prosperity of the bison economy that women were a part of.
It's time to meet up with Kayla and her friend Allie. They said to meet them at a local watering hole called the Paddle Trap. And even though the winds were still howling, we decided to climb into one of the igloos the restaurant had on a deck overlooking the Missouri River. Well, Kayla, thanks for inviting me out to North Dakota to go pheasant hunting.
Yeah, we could have had some better weather, but you never know what you're going to get in December.
At least we're out of the wind in the igloo.
Yes.
That wind is crazy today.
Yeah, we're sort of famous here for saying, if it wasn't for the wind. But we never really get to know what it's like if it wasn't.
Kayla, what is it for you that draws you most to hunting? I mean, because it's really become your lifestyle and your profession. I mean, it's really all of what you do.
You know, I always struggle with that question because I think for some people they're really honed in on one aspect of it, but it's just so much a part of who I am now. But it's for sure the dog has become a big component, definitely taken me pretty far down the upland path. But for sure meat as well. I love the contrast of like I'm stuck in an office doing work today, but then I'm out like in the freezing cold in the prairie, getting fresh air. It's cool to just have that mixed in with your life, I guess.
Yeah. You know, you get to this time of year, I mean, this wind is just howling out here right now. We've got deep snow. You got almost 2 feet of snow the other day.
Yeah.
And so how do the birds survive these extreme conditions? I mean, where are they going to go at this time of year?
So they'll really kind of, we end up focusing a lot on cattails or wetland sloughs. They'll really hunker in. We obviously don't have a lot of trees on the prairie, but for those like farmsteads or areas where there are tree rows and stuff, they'll certainly pile in there. But a lot of cattail sloughs is what keeps them warm. That's where they'll roost at night and feed a lot during the day too. They'll be out in fields. You'll see them in crop fields, but then back to the cattails.
They're really piled up this time of year too, especially with all the snow, but you drive around and the fields are just littered with them, and it's like, okay, this is going to be a good area later, and it helps to at least identify a good slough to try, but you got to still get close enough to them in the slough.
What are some of the things that you think are challenges for somebody starting hunting for the first time that you hear women say?
It's expensive.
Yeah.
Finding somebody to take them, for sure. It's just easier to learn from a female who's been through it and who's built like you, and who it's just it's a much more welcoming, and to learn from somebody you don't know. Like a spouse is gonna have no problem telling you you're doing it wrong and not saying it nicely, or like it's a different aspect to learn from somebody you don't know.
What kind of places are you thinking we'll hunt tomorrow?
We'll hit a lot of waterfowl production areas owned and managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and often because they're waterfowl production areas, there's sloughs, which tend to harbor cattails. So yeah, we'll hit probably a couple waterfowl production areas tomorrow, kind of focusing on those cattail areas, hopefully near some crop fields. We will have an adventurous walk across the prairie.
Okay.
It's pretty thick prairie grass. It's fun to hunt it early season because it'll hold some grouse or even pheasants in the grass, which is fun with the dogs. Cause you can actually see them. Yeah. It'll be interesting tomorrow in the snowdrift, so we'll work our way hopefully to around here and then kind of just follow this cattail edge into the wind. It should be out of the northwest.
I brought snowshoes along because I was looking at this and thinking it might be helpful to get out there.
I think I've never done it, but I've seen tracks out there. They're nice to walk in.
For sure.
And that's a pretty long hike over to that slope.
Yeah, about 3/4 a mile if this is a mile. So
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, 3/4 mile. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
As we left the warmth of the igloo, the bitter December winds reminded me of the stories Barbara had shared about the strength of the homesteaders in this area. I could tell Kayla was more than ready for tomorrow's hunt, but I started to wonder just how challenging these conditions might be for us. With the temperature hovering just above zero at sunrise, we met Kayla out at the waterfowl production area. The snowshoes promised to be helpful for the 3/4 mile hike to the eastern edge of this property. That was the location of the cattail slough, where we hoped to find a pheasant or two.
We want to cut to the south here a little bit more, or you think head straight where we're headed right now?
That telephone pole with the tree by it.
Yep.
If you head that way. I mean, you'll kind of, this stays about this wide. So,
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Let's go, bud.
The places you look for birds are different for every location, species, and time of year that you're hunting. On this hunt, we considered a few factors. It's late in the season, There's a ton of snow, and these birds need to stay warm and find something to eat. Cattail sloughs like these are one of the few places on the prairie that can provide good thermal cover. Just west of this slough was a field of standing corn, which would also provide a good source of food. So we knew this location would have good potential.
Oh. Yeah, make sure you get those shots. Yeah. Okay. Man down.
That didn't sound good. Well, that's bogus.
Yeah,
There's so much sign.
I know.
Oh no.
Sometimes you come up empty-handed, even when you're at a location with good potential for holding birds. We did see some pheasants, but they were off in a cornfield across the road, which was on private property. We didn't have permission to access that field, so we decided to try another spot. Kayla knew of a property to the north of us which was also private, but it was enrolled in the PLOTS program through the state, which provides walk-in access to hunters.
Readies? Okay, come on.
Gotta get out of that wind. That wind is a bit much.
It's important on any hunt to bring water for both you and the dog. Even in below freezing temps such as these, you need to stay hydrated during long hikes, even if you first have to chip through the ice to get at the water.
Icy. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. Got some sign. Got tracks in here.
On any hunt, it's important to maintain awareness of other hunters and dogs at all times. When you work through a field, hunters should walk abreast of each other and proceed at the same pace. Make sure that one hunter doesn't get out in front of the other. The safe zone of fire is an arc of approximately 45 degrees directly in front of each person.
Come on, let's go.
Ooh, what's that?
Oh,
What
those
is
are
it?
Huns.
We can shoot Huns, right?
Yeah. Where did they go?
Just went, I
Went
think
back
they
in the
just,
cattails?
I think they just went to the far side. yeah.
Okay. Nice!
One.
Fetch, buddy! Fetch! Fetch, buddy! Back! Fetch! Come here. Right here. Come here. Heel. Leave it. Leave it. Good boy. Good boy.
Oh,
All
good
right.
boy, good retrieve.
Nice shot.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, a Hun.
Mm-hmm.
That is, that's a first for me.
Hey, leave it. Leave it. Yeah, there's a lot of them around this year. They're kind of making a comeback, so.
Yeah.
Obviously, and we kind of flushed that covey early, so I knew they were in here somewhere. But
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly. About the size, maybe between a woodcock and a grouse, huh? Size-wise?
Yeah, I kind of call them our like hardy North Dakota quail.
Yeah,
You know.
right.
Maybe a little bigger than a quail, but.
Right. Really
yeah.
pretty fan.
Yeah.
that tail. Oh, that's neat. Well, should we try to go get that rooster? still?
Yeah,
let's
let's
see
do
if
it.
we can chase down that rooster.
As the hunt came to a close, we didn't have any pheasants in our game pouch, and I have to admit that this was one of the more challenging hunts I've done due to the cold temperature, steady wind, and deep snow. However, we didn't leave empty-handed, and I was able to celebrate my first gray partridge. Kayla told me that she was hosting a few friends for dinner who are part of the Capital City Ladybirds and invited me to join them. These women had created the first all-female chapter of Pheasants Forever, and I wanted to hear their story. Tell me a little bit more about the Ladybirds and how that group of women really support each other with hunting journey of yourself and others.
Yeah, it's been really fun to, again, it's, not always common to find this whole community of women that love to do some of the same things you do. So it's been really fun to spend time in the field with just women. It's a very different ambiance or experience. Sometimes we get a little closer together in the field because we're chit-chatting maybe a little too much. But we can ask each other about gear and reflect on some of the same experiences and things. So that's been really fun. And just a fun group to get together with potlucks, or we have regular meetings because we are a Pheasants Forever chapter, so we do have to get some work done occasionally. Several of them are also moms or recent moms, so I can definitely lean on them pretty heavily here soon, but yeah.
Are they your primary or your only sort of hunting group?
Probably the person I hunt with the most is my husband. We both kind of have a background in the outdoors, fishing, and he grew up coming out here to North Dakota to duck hunt. But a lot of our recent hunting has been new to both of us since we moved here. Taking on turkey hunting, upland hunting when we got Finley is new to both of us. We're spending a lot of time together on the weekends, but also some of probably my most cherished moments. And I think it's really helped grow our relationship. I mean, until you're 2 miles away from the truck and need to, I don't know, get through something together, right. It's strengthened our relationship quite a bit too in other components, so yeah.
You mentioned that this pot pie recipe is one that your mother or your grandmother gave you?
It's my mom's pie crust recipe, which is my grandma's pie crust recipe. They would not have me buy store-bought crust ever. That would be forbidden. But then the filling recipe, I kind of looked up a little and tweaked some for pheasant, but the pie crust is theirs, yes.
Gotcha. You think of pot pie, most people think of chicken pot pie or turkey pot pie. I think a lot of recipes for turkey or chicken can be used for wild game, right?
That's certainly where I get all, if not, or most, if not all of my ideas, is just like a similar meat, and why couldn't it be used for pheasant or hun in this case? But yeah, especially chicken, because it's very similar. Pheasants are a white meat, and that's where I get a lot of my recipe ideas.
So I noticed that the breasts you pulled out for this meal, you've got them vacuum sealed. Is that the way you usually store your wild game?
Yeah, that's how we like to store most of our wild game. I will say, I've talked to a lot of people that vacuum seal, and one tricky part is make the vacuum sealer work. So we used to spend a lot of time with paper towels, but now kind of our preferred method is to just kind of flash freeze the meat really quickly. Then it's a little bit drier and you can vacuum seal it well. But we kind of try to organize our freezer, so I think we just finished up anything from last year bird-wise. But yeah, these are from a weekend or so ago.
Okay. So what's the process for this pheasant pot pie or pheasant hun pot pie?
So we're gonna get the crust recipe mixed up and then just kind of cooling. It rolls out nicer when it's cool. And then we'll work on the filling, which is basically just cutting up some pheasant and hun into some chunks, and carrots, onions, celery. Cook those in a healthy amount of butter on the stovetop.
Butter makes it better.
Yeah, and then you just kind of add the chicken broth and cream, and it really thickens up. And then we'll roll out our crust, pour it in, and bake it for about 30 minutes.
It's a hearty kind of meal that's good for this cold weather.
For sure, yeah. It's one of my favorite recipes this time of year. Yeah, chilly out. It's just nice to have and warm up when you get back from hunting.
You don't have to have a lot of meat, right? And it goes a long way. So
yeah.
How much for like one recipe of a pot pie What does it require?
Yeah, so the recipe I have is just 2 breasts, so 1 pheasant. I think for huns, we maybe do 2 huns in there. They're a little smaller bird, but you could put more if you wanted it to be a little meatier. But yeah, it doesn't take much with all those veggies and the filling to fill up that crust, so it goes a long way.
Tacos or the pot pie are great recipes for somebody who's just starting out hunting and maybe only gets 1 bird, right? And you don't have a whole lot, but you want to share it with others. It's a great way to use 1 bird to go the distance with a few people.
For sure, yeah.
Well, put me to work. What can I help you with?
All right, we'll get you chopping some veggies for sure.
Sounds good. The warmth of these women leading the capital city lady birds was a welcome contrast to the sub-zero temps just outside the door. It was easy to see why they gather regularly, not only to hunt, but to share a meal. There might be a Pheasants Forever chapter just like this one in your community, and if there isn't, you could start one. I can almost guarantee that Kayla and these women would be more than happy to help you get it kicked off.